Hey everybody, welcome to ChinFat. In this episode, I am continuing talking about the Panasonic Lumix S5 Mark II X, which is a full-frame camera, and we're going to go through the setup options on this camera here, show you how to set this up, get it ready for cinema. So on the top here, obviously, you need to have the camera turned on. Here's the switch right here, so I can just flip that switch to on and power it on, and that turns it on. Now I'm not going over any of the still photography tutorials on this, showing you how to use this for still photography. I don't know a ton about that, but we're going to make sure that this wheel here, you've got these, all these settings down here. Most of these on here are ways to set up this camera to do still photography, but there's one little icon right here that will set this into video mode. It's got a little picture of a camera next to it, and it says M next to it, which is manual setting of settings in the video function there. And that's how we record video there. So that's really all we have to do to get it into video mode. Now we're going to start working on the screen here. Okay, so the main way to get in the menu is going to be this middle button right here. You got this outer wheel that you can rotate to go through your menu here, but you got this middle button that's to select and also goes into the menu. So first thing I'm going to do here, a couple things to make sure this is set up. First of all, I don't like how bright my screen is here. It's kind of dark. So if you go under the menu here, you've got these four little menu items on the side. I'll show this a bit again in a bit here, because right now this screen is very dim. So I can't stand how dim it is. I like it to be brighter. So I'm going to go to the wrench right here, and you can push these with this wheel up and down and left and right. You can also scroll it to scroll through menus here, and then the middle button to select. So I'm going to go down to the wrench here. I'm going to arrow over to the right, and this is all the sub menus that's under that main wrench menu. So I've got the wrench, this little gear icon here. I'm going to move up here until I've got this first monitor setting here. I'm going to arrow to the right, and now I'm into the sub menu. I can arrow down or I can scroll. Either way, whatever your preference is. Actually, it's a monitor backlight that will make this screen brighter. I'm going to go under this. It's on auto, and for some reason, it's like really dark in this room, and I don't like it. So I'm going to go to +2. You can start it at 0, 1, 2, 3, or go dimmer if you want to. I'm going to do it +2, and now it looks nice and bright, and now I can continue here. Another thing, first thing you really need to do here is if you are setting this up for cinema, you've got to set up the system frequency, which will determine whether or not you're working in broadcast settings or in film settings. Broadcast settings, it does a fraction of a frame. It's basically, it comes from the old drop frame. It is not drop frame, but it is used to kind of meet the broadcast time, where 23.976 is actually broadcast time. It meets the hour properly. If you are trying to do a TV show that's exactly 1 hour long with the commercial breaks and everything, it's got to be shot in. It's got to be conformed or shot in that frequency here. There's not a lot of that going on these days. Most movies, most TV series are just shot for streaming now, which is completely different than just the broadcast hour. So I'm going to go over here. I'm under the wrench here. So I'm going to go under the wrench here, and I'm going to arrow down to the very bottom. There's this other little wrench at the bottom there. I'm going to select that. And now I'm going to arrow over and go down to system frequency. So that's where you'll find this. And right now it's set for 59.94, which is basically that drop frame affected timing for broadcast. It's not drop frame, but it like adheres to the old drop frame right here. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to arrow it down to 24 hertz here, which is cinema here. Select that, and it tells you to shut the camera off and turn it back on. So I'm going to shut that off, turn it back on, and the system frequency should be set at 24. Pretty much all the Panasonic cameras are very similar to that, though you have to change the system frequency to the true 24 if you wanted to run it at a true 24 frames per second. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my menu here. This is your arrow back, and this will take you back through the menu and get you back to your main screen. And now that I'm looking at my main screen here, what you usually want to do is you kind of want to look around on this screen on the top and the bottom and kind of see what your settings are and see what you need to set up. First of all, the top right-hand corner says we are on a standard look, which refers to how it treats your footage when you shoot it, that it records it with contrast and with saturation at a certain level, but it kind of burns it into the image. So what I like to do is I like to shoot in log and then have it display a LUTS to my screen. So the log format is very flat, but it preserves the details, details in the highlights and in the darks. So I like to shoot in vlog or any sort of log if I'm typically on a camera, and have that ability in grading, color grading afterwards. Like I said, it will preserve the highlights and the details in the darks and in the highlights at the same time. So we're going to go into menu, we're going to change that to vlog here. And we're going to go over to the wrench, and we're going to arrow up a couple times and go under the camera there. And now we can see it here in this very first setting right up here. You can see, by the way, this is a touch screen, so you can touch this as well. I'm going to arrow up and go to this very first little setting there, and I'm going to arrow to the right. I don't know what that icon is there, but it goes, actually, I think that's like it contrast image or something. I'm not sure, but we're going to go to photo cell. I'm going to select this, and right now it's in standard, and we're going to scroll this over until it is in. It has all these LUTs that it will burn into the look as it'll burn in a look here, but I'm going to go to Vlog. And now that makes everything look really flat on the screen, but we can do a setting that adjusts that so it records in log, but it displays it in a LUT that makes it look pleasing to the eye while you're shooting. And then when you're editing, you can color grade the log footage. So I'm going to arrow back there. We've got that in Vlog. Okay, so if we want a LUT to display, I've got two different places I can display. I can either display it to my monitor or to an external device that we have here. And right now I've got it plugged into a different monitor, and I can see on the monitor here it's in log, and on my external monitor it's in log as well. But I'm going to hit menu, and we're going to go over to the gear icon, move over to the right, and it's going to be this menu right there. It's that second camera down menu there. We're going to arrow to the right, and it's got this Vlog View Assist. We're going to select that, and we're going to tell it we want it to show in Rec 709, which is basically it converts it from Vlog to 709, which is a very contrasty, very saturated look. So we're going to kind of see what the image will look like when it's finished, essentially. But then we can revert back to the Vlog in editing and edit and grade it as we wish. So I'm going to go down to, and you got two options. You got the external, you've got the monitor, which is this monitor right here, and then you've got the HDMI out. So whatever is sending at HDMI, it can send it. You can basically send that LUT out to your external monitor as well. So I'm going to turn it both on here, and I'm going to turn it on for my HDMI as well. Now if we go back to our main menu, this is now showing kind of contrasty and saturated. So that's not what it's recording, but it's just displaying that look live so you know what it's going to look like when you're finished. All right, one other thing with the Portkeys electronic viewfinder that I showed in the last one, for some reason it supports 4K, but out of the Panasonic, it does not like the flavor of 4K that's coming out of the Panasonic. So I'm not sure why. So one little trick, and this is, it works fine on Atomos and a bunch of other different monitors I tested on. The only one that seems to have issues with is the Portkey. And I've never had that issue with the Portkeys monitor electronic viewfinder. It works great on other 4K cameras. So to get to the output where it sends it out as a different resolution, which makes it work on certain monitors that are only 1920 by 1080 supported. So to get that, you're going to go to this little gear icon there. We're going to arrow to the right. We're going to move down to this menu right here, the little Wi-Fi looking thing, and you'll arrow to the right to go to HDMI record output. And you're going to go to this enlarged live display, and this tells it what resolution to send out of the recorder. You're going to select that, and you can choose mode 1, which is where the output to the resolution matches that of the video quality going out. That's only good if you're recording it on an external recorder. If you're trying to display it to a monitor that's not 4K, it will not. If it's in 6K in this camera, it will not display properly on there. So you usually want this off. But I'm going to put it to mode 2 here if I'm going out to the Portkeys, and it will take it down to full HD, which is 1920 by 1080. And for some reason that works, even though the Portkeys is a 4K monitor. It doesn't like the Panasonic 4K signal for some reason. So I'm going to keep that off. We're going to arrow out. But that is how you change that to make it work with a Portkeys monitor, with a Portkeys electronic viewfinder. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my main screen here by arrowing out, and we're going to look here at the top. I've already done I've got the Vlog set there, and it says it's really small letters. It's got the monitor, HDMI out, LUTs are being displayed. But now we're going to start going into the format here. So we're in MOV 4K 420 10L, and we're going to put this into a different setting. First of all, I want to record to my external hard drive here. I want to record to this solid state drive, this SSD. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under menu, and we're going to arrow to the right, get down to this wrench here, and arrow down, and arrow all the way up this menu to the top. That's a little card symbol, and we're going to arrow over and go turn on. I wish it would default to this, but you have to actually tell it to record to the USB SSD here. I don't want it recording internally to an SD card. We're going to record to this external USB-C SSD card here. I'm going to select that and turn it on. And now as we're recording to this card, if I hit record, it starts recording to this card because I don't have an internal SD card. It is recording to this solid state drive here. I'm going to stop recording. Now that we're set up to record to that card, I'm going to go into our format settings here. I'm going to go to menu, and we're going to change our format. We're going to go up to the camera icon on the far left there in the main menu, arrow to the right, and arrow down to the film strip right there. The film strip has I'm going to hit menu. So MOV is a good solid format to record in, but I'm going to go to ProRes. I like recording in ProRes. It's a really high quality. You can get up to 16-bit color depth if you record in ProRes 422 HQ. And it can only do that if you have a solid state card on. I do have the solid state card on, so it will open up those options. Otherwise, those options will be grayed out. And I'm going to go down to image area. Video is going to cover pretty much the entire sensor. It does crop a little bit on the top and the bottom. You can use anamorphics, have it use the entire sensor, but it does use the entire sensor from left to right, which is great. So I'm going to go full. If you want to do APS-C, it's going to crop in on the sensor like it did on the earlier 5D Mark II and Mark III that I mentioned before on the Canons. And then pixel to pixel basically just records a 1-to-1 pixel aspect ratio, which it'll basically record a perfect square using your entire image sensor. But I want to just use the full sensor from left to right. I'm going to arrow down and go to record quality, and we're going to change this to, right now it's under full HD. I'm going to scroll this up, and it keeps going through all these different resolutions and formats here. The one I want is as high as you can get. It will record in 6K if you're recording the pixel to pixel option here. But if I'm just recording where it's a wider aspect ratio, like a 1.89 to 1 aspect ratio, like as a cinematic aspect ratio, I'm going to say it's almost 6K. It's 5,776 by 3056 here. I'm going to select that, and that is ProRes 422 HK at 24p. So we're going to select that. That's going to be very high quality. But if you, I kind of shoot a lot of my just normal stuff in ProRes 422. It brings the file size down. It's about, it's like 1.0 gigabits here, gigabits per second, where if you go into this one, it's 1.6. So it's like 1.6 times the size of this one here. So it just depends. And this one shoots in 10-bit color, which is great. And this one shoots in 16-bit color, which is even better. But if I've been shooting a lot of my stuff in just ProRes 422 because my computer can handle it really well, and the HQ has a little bit of issues running on my computer in almost 6K. So I'm going to select ProRes 422. So just your options there. If you're shooting a movie that's going to be going on the big screen, it's going up on, going to be showing it in movie theaters and stuff, you would probably want to shoot ProRes 422 HQ. So there we go. We're set up at, it says 5.8K of 422 there in ProRes. Great format to shoot in 24p using the full sensor. The next one over here is this little P that shows up at the top of the screen right there. That P means it's in program auto for exposure. It's going to change the exposure automatically. It doesn't have control over the f-stop on these lenses. They're not the digital pin lenses that connect to the camera. You have to control that manually. But it will control shutter speed, and it will control your shutter speed and your ISO to get a proper exposure level. But I like to do that manually, so I'm going to go under menu. I'm going to go into the camera setting. I'm going to arrow to the right and go up to the very top setting. There's my exposure mode right there. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go under M for manual. Now I'm in exposure manual option, so I can control my ISO and my shutter speed manually. If you go back to the main screen here, first of all, let's go through shutter speed. I like shutter angle. It really depends. Shutter speed and shutter angle are the exact same thing. They just use different calculations. They just use different calculations based on what mode you like. If you've been using a motion picture film camera, you'll be more used to shutter angle. So we're going to go under our settings here, and we are going to arrow down one into the second menu under the camera here, and we're going to go right there, the shutter speed and gain operation. This is going to tell you how to display your shutter speed and your ISO. I'm going to select this, and right now I like it on angle and ISO. I mean, those are both kind of film languages there that we're using, so shutter angle and ISO. If you like shutter speed and you're familiar with shutter speed, that's fine. But just keep in mind that 1/48th shutter speed is the equivalent of 180-degree shutter angle. I've got another video that kind of shows this. If you want to watch that video, I will post that link under the description. But if we go back to our main menu, now we've got, this is an 11-degree shutter angle, which is a really fast shutter speed, and then we got 5,000 ISO. And right now the ISO is automated, so it's trying to boost up the ISO automatically. Now the way you can access your shutter speed is just by using this wheel on the top right-hand corner of your camera here. You just grab this wheel and roll it, and this automatically changes your shutter speed. A standard shutter speed for 24 frames per second is going to be 180-degree shutter angle. If you change it to a 90-degree shutter angle, that will be half the exposure time. So that would go from 1/48 to 196 and so on. You can keep cutting that in half as you wish. But for standard film, it is 180-degree shutter angle. So let's go under the ISO. The ISO is found on the top. It's one of these top buttons right here. You can maybe hopefully see that underneath my cage right there. You got 3 buttons on top. You got your white balance button, your exposure meter on the far right, and in the middle you got your ISO. I'm going to hit that middle ISO button right there. Hopefully you can see that. Let's angle this. Hopefully you can see the ISO. It even says ISO right on it. I'm going to push that button, and it brings my ISO open right there on the screen. So now, right now, you'll notice it's on auto. I'm going to use my scroll. I'm going to scroll it over. When you're shooting in Vlog, the lowest the ISO goes is in 640, which is nice because some Sony cameras, earlier Sony cameras, when you shot in log, it would only let you shoot at 1600 minimum, and that was super, super bright for outside. So I'm going to set this for, if I'm indoor, probably 600. If I'm outdoor, I'm going to get it as low as I can, which is only 640, unfortunately. But that's the way it is when you're shooting in log. So I'm going to select 640, and now my ISO is set at 640. You can change your iris to get a good exposure as well. That's your f-stop right there. But right now I am set at 180-degree shutter angle, and I'm set at 640 on my ISO. So we are getting pretty well set up here. Another item that you might want to set up is thinking about focus, being able to have a focus assist. And one feature that the Panasonic has here, and most cameras have this, is if you go from the camera and arrow to the right and arrow down, you're going to find, where is it? Right on this little focus, on the little one that says focus right there, you'll see a focus peaking over here to the right. So arrow to the right, then arrow down, and our focus peaking is turned on. If you select that, you can turn it on and off, or you can go to set, and you can tell it if you want it to be super sensitive. You can say, I want to turn the sensitivity up to 2. So now it's going to be, and you can tell it depending on where you're working, depending on what kind of color scheme you're working with, you can tell it if you want to show like white, if you want to show yellow, if you want to show, let's try white right now. I'm going to go back to my main menu here, and let's look at the brick right here. When I focus this now, you can see that white, the little white dots kind of growing across the brick right now. Let's try yellow. Go back under menu. We're going to go to set, change this to yellow, greenish or something, bright yellow. Let's try bright yellow. Go back. And now you can see these little dancing pixels to show you a concentration on what is in focus. You can see my focus going across that brick right there as I'm changing my focus. So if we're looking at the bottom here, right here it says SSD. You can barely read that. But I'm moving over here. It says 4 hours and 17 minutes is what I can record on this card right here in this format. So that's 4 hours of footage I can shoot on, 4 hours plus footage I can shoot on there. So one of the last things I probably need to set on this is going to be my white balance. And that's how it treats the temperature depending on what sort of light you're shooting under here. And if we go into the top here, you'll see the white balance button like right there. It says WB on it. And if you select that, if you push that button, it's going to go into the white balance mode here. So let's select that, go under white balance. And then you got it on the bottom right now. It's going auto white balance. We don't want that. We want to tell this if we were working under incandescent light. Right now I've got my LEDs going, and these are basically, I've got my LEDs going, and these are basically sunlight. So I'm going to go under the sun here. So two basic temperatures that you have are 5600 Kelvin, which is sun temperature, and then incandescent, which is kind of studio lights here. So that's incandescent right now. I notice how it looks a little too bluish, so I'm going to go under the sun there, and the sun balances it. My walls are kind of cream colored, so that doesn't look like a true white, but that's fine. But this is what I'm working under are the 5600 Kelvin lights as opposed to the 3200 Kelvin lights, which are incandescent and sunlight. If it's cloudy day or if you're in the shade, you can change those color temperatures as well. But I'm going to select the sunlight because I am under these LEDs that are daylight temperature. And one other thing to notice on the Panasonic is you've got this little Q button right there. This Q button basically, I think it's called Q for quick maybe, because it brings up this little quick menu with a lot of the main settings that you can quickly change. See, you've got your manual exposure, you got ProRes settings, and you can just click on these and change them down here using the upper wheel to scroll here. It has a little icon that shows that that's your upper wheel, and that will change. And you can see this is pretty nice. It shows like your widescreen format. You can see that that's a square format there. You have your different aspect ratios and resolutions there. And it shows you what you're shooting in there, your record quality. You can go under your color temperature right there, access your color temperature. You can access if it's in manual mode, program mode, auto mode, whatever you want to have it in. Your photo style, which is under Vlog. So you got a lot of these kind of settings like right here, right at the touch of your finger here. So, and one thing that this does have is your metering mode. So this is the last thing I'm going to cover right here is your metering mode. This is basically your light meter. This is telling you what your exposure is on your screen right now, right? So right now it's telling me that my exposure, generally speaking, is one stop overexposed. If we go to our Q button here and we click on the meter mode, right now it is saying it's under multimeter metering, which is kind of metering. It's giving you kind of an average of your entire screen there. You can do center weighted, and you can also do spot metering there as well. Now when we go back, you'll notice there's a little crosshair in the middle, and that is the exact exposure spot that is giving me a recommendation that I'm one stop overexposed. So I like doing this under the multi metering. That's the default, but I like it in the multi-metering, generally speaking. If you're trying to kind of get a spot on somebody's face, you can put it on the spot. If you're just doing people that are kind of in the center, you can tell it's center weighted, but I like it on the multimeter there. We're going to go back. So now you'll notice here, as I change my exposure here, I'm going to change my areas, right? It's telling me that that is a properly exposed image right there, right at 0. If I bring this down more, it's saying now I'm 1 stop underexposed, 2/3 of a stop underexposed, 1/3 of a stop. Right there is a good exposure. So this is good for getting proper exposure. And that's about it for setting up this camera. If you can understand setting up the camera, a camera like this with all those settings, you should be able to set up almost any camera. It's just a matter of going through the menu and finding those settings. Sometimes they call them different things depending on the company, but that's how you set up this specific camera, which is the Panasonic Lumix S5 Mark II X. And now we are ready to record. It's recording. Look at this. I'm making a movie of a brick wall and a white wall. It's a great movie. Stop. So thanks for watching Chin Fat, and if you have any questions or comments, please post them.